Chapter 557 Black Snake Magic Armor. The giant corpse general immediately turned around after realizing that it had picked the wrong target. The woman's head let out a shriek at Mo Fan. The cold breeze swept past Mo Fan's face along with some raindrops. The blood tabby was still activated. He was able to dodge the corpse general's attack from the current distance. The corpse general stomped forward and swung its axes wildly. Several zombies nearby were simply slashed into pieces without noticing. Giant Shadow Spike. Meng-E finally finished casting her intermediate shadow spell as the corpse general was just about to charge forward. She released an icy aura of the shadow element. The dark energy was a lot stronger than the power that Mo Fan possessed. It was obvious that Meng-E had a relatively high-quality shadow seed. The three giant shadow spikes disappeared into the rain. Meng-E did not delay the giant shadow spikes. She knew that the situation was not in their favor, so she quickly fired the three giant shadow spikes at the corpse general. Mo Fan's basic lightning spell was unable to paralyze the giant corpse general, but the giant shadow spikes were extremely effective when used to immobilize their target. The first giant shadow spike immediately nailed the corpse general to its position, preventing it from moving around. It felt like the spike had penetrated its waist and stuck into the ground. The corpse general was unable to break free from the spike despite struggling wildly. After the second giant shadow spike landed, the corpse general had trouble making noise. Its arms stopped all of a sudden in mid-movement. Its bloodshot eyes were glaring at Meng-E. As the third spike landed, the corpse general shivered in pain, as if it had suffered a great blow to its spirit. The giant shadow spike was effective against the ferocious corpse general, giving Mo Fan some time to catch his breath. He proceeded to draw a lightning star pattern. Thunderbolt. Wild strikes. Mo Fan was surrounded by flickers of electricity. As he pointed at the corpse general's head, several purple lightning strikes descended fiercely. The fierce lightning blasted the corpse general's body open. The flesh that was as hard as a tank scattered in the air, leaving a huge hole in the creature's body. Following a few other lightning strikes, the corpse general's body was clearly being blown apart, blood pouring out like a fountain. Any other creature would be half dead after suffering the successive blows, yet the damage to the undead creature was minimal. They could simply replenish the flesh and skin they had lost by devouring other creatures. As long as the joints supporting their movement were intact, they would still be very much alive. The corpse general wriggled its blood-soaked body. The giant shadow spike began to loosen up under the enormous pressure. The power of the giant shadow spikes was limited. If a creature's strength reached a certain level, it would simply break free from the giant shadow spikes. The corpse general soon freed itself from the giant shadow spikes. The creature seemed to be humiliated by the injury it had just suffered. The woman's head on its body suddenly lashed out with a long tongue. The tongue flicked towards Mo Fan. Even Mo Fan's blood tabby was not quick enough to dodge the extended tongue. The tongue wrapped around Mo Fan's left foot and hoisted him into the air upside down. Mo Fan lost his balance. He could sense the corpse general approaching him. Once the tongue dragged him to the corpse general's side, he would either be chopped into minced meat or bitten to death by the woman's head. The woman's head was no longer just a normal human's head. Her mouth had taken up almost half of the entire face. It felt like her forehead had cracked open all the way to the back of her skull. Meng-E was suddenly lost, not knowing how to save Mo Fan when she saw him being dragged away. She could only hear Mo Fan yelling in the air, "Use some other magic." Meng-E immediately drew a star pattern without hesitation. A thought crossed Mo Fan's mind as he was dragged closer to the corpse general. His figure was immediately covered in a blue-black glow. The glow was not produced by radiation. It was actually coiling around Mo Fan's joints like a soft ribbon. Initially, only one or two wisps of the blue-black glow were wrapping around his body, but his entire figure was soon encapsulated by the light. The corpse general raised two of its axes and flung them in Mo Fan's direction. A brilliant light scattered in the air. The hatchets struck his chest. Any human would simply be torn apart by the enormous force. However, instead of the sound of flesh being torn apart, a piercing metallic screech rang out when the hatchets landed on Mo Fan. Mo Fan slammed to the ground right in front of the corpse general's feet. When the creature realized that the guy was still alive, it furiously raised its hammerfoot and stomped down on his abdomen. Mo Fan was suffering from slight dizziness, yet he was still able to complete the shadow element star pattern in the short amount of time he had. His figure sank into the shadow just as the corpse general was trying to stomp him flat. He quickly moved to the side. The corpse general's stomp missed. On top of that, it could not tell which of the two shadows was the real Mo Fan. As a result, it swung all four arms around, two hatchets slashing at the shadow on the left and two others at the right. Mo Fan had just crawled out from the shadow when he was struck by the hacking axes. The weapon dealt a great blow to the guy before he could even establish a foothold, sending him flying in an arc in the rain, slamming into a pit as he landed on the muddy ground. Holy fuck! Mo Fan rose to his feet in pain. He could feel the taste of blood surging in his throat. He looked down and saw several deep scratches on the black snake armor. The material of the armor was relatively soft. Although the corpse general did not break a hole in it, the force still penetrated the armor into Mo Fan's body. It felt like all his organs were almost dislocated. Meng-E glanced at Mo Fan in astonishment. It was clear that the man's blue-black snake scale magic armor was incredibly high quality. It was still in one piece after receiving a direct blow from the corpse general. Dimensional Summoning. A lunar white gap appeared in front of Meng-E. Chapter 558 The Dark Night. The sound of rapid galloping came from the gap, sounding like it was approaching from a great distance. The next second, Mo Fan, who was still recovering from the blow, saw a great black horse leaping out from the lunar white gap. Its body was covered in dense black hair, with a black mist floating around it. The horse had a single horn, which was also black in color, emitting a flicker of black lightning. A figure wearing black armor was sitting on the back of the horse. It looked similar to a human, yet the heavy, European-style armor was completely empty inside. "What the hell is this?" asked the astonished Mo Fan. He was also a summoner, yet his dimensional summoning was only able to summon a wolf-type creature. It was quite impressive that he had managed to level up his beast to his current stage. To Mo Fan's surprise, the girl's dimensional summoning had summoned an even rarer creature. A dark knight? The figure indeed resembled a warrior sitting on an elegant black horse, holding a half-crescent scimitar in his hand. However, for some reason, the raindrops were evaporated instantly when they landed on it. Dark Knight. Meng-E immediately ordered the imperious Dark Knight to deal with the giant corpse general. Mo Fan did not summon the Swift Star Wolf, as his summoned creature was no match for the giant corpse general. It was likely that the creature would die in the fight, but the Dark Knight whom Meng-E had summoned looked fairly promising. But since dimensional summoning was only a basic spell, there would be a limit to the summoned creature's strength. It was possible that the woman was only trying to buy them some time. Mo Fan could still feel his blood rumbling inside his body. The black snake magic armor had negated most of the damage, yet the same principle applied. The magician still had to endure the force from the hit. Mo Fan, who was unable to move for the time being, was watching Meng-E from afar, hoping that she could hold on until he recovered. The horse uttered a shriek and raised its front limbs as the knight signaled from atop the saddle. The stomp sent the muddy water splattering. However, the horse had already turned into a black arrow, dashing forward with a wild gust of wind at the giant corpse general before the droplets even landed. The knight on the horse held the scimitar with a reverse grip and leaned forward. Meanwhile, the giant corpse general raised its four arms, waiting for the unique darkness creature to present itself. The knight and the horse almost became one, sweeping through the rain like a black arrow. The giant corpse general was just about to fling its arms down, but the Dark Knight was already behind it. The scimitar was drawn out from its sheath, leaving a long slash in the rain. The giant corpse general had yet to realize that its body was already left with a giant hole. Its sturdy body shuddered for a second, before blood and water poured out from it. Mo Fan took a deep breath. Wasn't this Dark Knight a bit too quick? It simply finished the attack within the blink of an eye. The Swift Star Wolf was well known for his speed, yet he was still a few levels lower than the Dark Knight. The giant corpse general was already left with a great hole before it managed to bring its arms down. The Dark Knight did not stop and remain in his cool posture, quickly turning the horse around after finishing his blow. He utilized the momentum of the spin to execute a slash to the general's back. The black half-crescent sword slashed forward, the view even more stunning in the rain. The sharp edge landed on one of the giant corpse general's limbs. Its limb, with flesh as hard as rock, was cleanly amputated after making contact with the blade. As the giant corpse general's arm fell to the ground, the filthy creature uttered a seemingly pained or furious cry. It raised its other 3 limbs and charged at the Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was incredibly fast with his sword. Despite facing the sequence of wild attacks from the 3 arms, it looked like he was drawing a web with the movements of his sword, completely nullifying the attacks from the giant corpse general. Mo Fan was left speechless. Isn't this Dark Knight somehow too powerful? Not only did he inflict serious damage to the giant corpse general with only 2 attacks, he could defend himself against the filthy creature's attacks. Tried to recover quickly. My cultivation isn't strong enough. I can only summon him for a limited time, Meng Ye reminded Mo Fan. Mo Fan felt better after hearing the words. Meng Ye had obviously cast a basic summoning spell, yet if a basic spell alone could summon such a powerful darkness creature, she would not be afraid of the giant corpse general. As he thought, an exceedingly strong summoned creature would have limitations. Not only was the Dark Knight able to fight fearlessly against the giant corpse general, he had the upper hand in the battle, too. It implied that the Dark Knight was one of the strongest species in the summoning dimension, and usually, it was fairly difficult to control such creatures. Less than sword burst ultimate, greater than, the Dark Knight uttered in English. Mo Fan did not understand him, but he could easily tell that the knight was speaking in the human tongue. A few rounds later, the Dark Knight moved nimbly and secured the perfect chance for a counterattack. He struck at lightning speed and immediately pulled back. A few moments later, the arm where the hit landed suddenly burst apart with the formidable energy of darkness. The energy exploded and blasted another limb of the giant corpse general to pieces. The Dark Knight had amputated another arm of the giant corpse general. The giant corpse general was now covered in wounds. As Mo Fan was hoping the Dark Knight could simply finish the giant corpse general off, the knight suddenly sheathed his sword and galloped off into the distance. His figure slowly merged with the darkness in the rain. Even though he was fairly close, it looked like he had gone into a different dimension, slowly vanishing into thin air. If it weren't for the blood, amputated limbs and sword marks around him, it felt like the Dark Knight had not even appeared. He had simply come and gone in a mysterious way. The time was too short. The Dark Knight was powerful, yet the duration he could stay was less than a tenth of the Swift Star Wolf. It's seriously injured. Don't give it any chance to come close to us, said Meng Ye. My turn. Mo Fan decisively drew another lightning star pattern. Thunderbolt. Stormy clouds appeared above. Mo Fan, who had managed to catch his breath, immediately unleashed the full strength of the thunderbolt. Wild strikes. The power of the lightning was more than enough to inflict damage to the giant corpse general, and slammed its enormous body to the ground, leaving the creature covered in blood and holes trembling in fear. Chapter 559. It's daytime. The giant corpse general's blood and liquid were splattering across the place. Its wild attacks had finally weakened. The rain still fell heavily. Suddenly, a huge lump of mud sprouted into the air. Mo Fan was just about to cast a lightning spell to inflict serious damage on the giant corpse general. To his surprise, several zombies covered in mud suddenly appeared nearby. The zombies were heading for Mo Fan with their filthy mouths at surprising speed. Mo Fan turned around and saw the zombies breaking through the defense set up by Li and A Xing. The wave of them was rolling forward like a black current. Mo Fan had no choice but to interrupt his intermediate spell. His figure was surrounded by a lightning strike, creating an electric field around him. The electric field covered the area within 30 meters of Mo Fan's feet. The zombies that were lunging at him were paralyzed instantly. Lightning Strike was ineffective against the warrior-level giant corpse general, yet it was more than enough to handle these servant-class undead. A huge number of undead were immobilized by Mo Fan's electric field. The lightning serpents dashed across the ground and struck the zombies. Those that were close to Mo Fan were quickly scorched by lightning. "There's too many of them, we can't hold on any longer," yelled Ali. His voice had come from a huge group of zombies. It seemed he was completely surrounded by the undead. "Same here," Lu Ru's voice said from the distance at the same time. There were simply too many zombies after every undead within a kilometer was summoned here. The longer the fight went on, the more zombies would show up. On top of that, the giant corpse general never stopped uttering cries, summoning the zombies nearby as cannon fodder. The team was completely surrounded by the undead. Despite the upper hand that the Dark Knight had granted them, the team soon found themselves in a pinch. "Didn't I ask you to run away before? Great, none of us can leave now," complained Shorty. The giant corpse general did not charge at them recklessly. It had suffered quite serious injuries. It continued to cry endlessly and watched from afar, waiting for the zombies to wear out the team. The zombies uttered cries and shoved one another around to get closer to their target. Some even crawled onto the bodies of others. Mo Fan was able to keep the situation under control with the electric field. Meng E was standing close to Mo Fan, relying on his electric field to provide her with some relief. However, she wore a huge frown still, as the situation was fairly grim for the team. She glanced at the sky and saw a thin ray of light barely making it through the rain. "It will be daytime soon," she reminded everyone. Mo Fan glanced at the giant corpse general in the distance, and saw the creature wearing a vicious grin as it uttered an unsatisfied cry. The frenzied undead suddenly halted in place. Faint sunlight shone down upon the place. The presence of death quickly dissipated. Without the presence of death, the undead were like stranded fish, and began to jump around in a panic. They uttered terrified cries and covered their heads, extremely vulnerable to sunlight, and proceeded to dig into the ground. The undead entrapping Ali and Shing quickly ran away. As a matter of fact, it had been daytime for quite a while, yet the thick clouds and rain had delayed it. Regardless of how weak the sunlight was, it was still light. Most importantly, once the presence of death which they breathed in dissipated, they would soon die to the sunlight if they did not return to the underground or back to their tombs. The zombies flowed away like a falling tide, similar to how they came. The undead had given Mo Fan and his crew a horrifying experience. If the darkness had only lasted just a little longer, they would simply have died to the surrounding zombies. "Thank heaven," swore Shorty, who was too lazy to wipe the sweat off his face. Meng E's two subordinates, Ali and Shing, no longer looked relaxed as before. They regrouped with Meng E, not knowing what to do with the injuries they had. They simply lowered their heads and apologized for failing to protect their master. Meng E did not comment on it. She glanced at her rain-soaked clothes and her disheveled hair. "Let's find a place to hide from the rain first. It's too cold. It's easy to get sick like this," said Lu Ru. "It's still some distance to Wa Village," said the muscular man. "Head for the Kindling Mountains. There should be a cave somewhere. We can stay there for now," suggested Shorty. "The demon beasts of Kindling Mountains aren't easy to deal with." "Don't worry, I know a place without them," said Shorty. The team followed Shorty towards the Kindling Mountains. The place was like a natural barrier, standing upright and firm. It was quite difficult to find a cave based on the structure of the mountain walls. After all, the walls were fairly steep. Not everyone could walk on the steep walls. However, Shorty managed to lead everyone to a cave. It was located halfway along the walls, and could only be reached by climbing up some vines. "There used to be a blood beast here. Our team killed the beast around a year ago, so there shouldn't be any demon beasts living inside it." Shorty spread apart the weeds covering the entrance of the cave. Shing snapped his fingers and summoned a puff of flame at the tip of his finger. The flame lit up the cave. Even though there was a foul smell inside the cave, the air was fairly dry. It was a lot better than staying in the rain outside. "You two, guard the entrance," Meng E said to her subordinates calmly. The two nodded and guarded the path, not allowing anyone to go any deeper into the cave. Only Lu Ru, who was also a woman, was allowed to go past. The eyes of Shorty and Mo Fan, the two perverts, flickered. They stood on their toes, trying to peek into the cave over the two subordinates. Unfortunately, it was completely dark inside. It turned out that Meng A had summoned a dark curtain, preventing Mo Fan, who also possessed the shadow element, from peeking inside. The cave was quiet, with 2 men guarding the path and 3 other men waiting at the entrance. They could hear rustling from the cave as clothes slid across the women's soft, tender skin. The men simply stared at one another, feeling their throats and mouths turning dry. Chapter 560. Who would complain about having too many girls? Try to peek again and I'll dig your eye out, snapped a Xing when he saw Shorty's lewd acts. Who's peeking? I'm just feeling a bit tired. By the way, that was such a close call. I thought we were done for. Shorty sat on the ground, as if he was trying to imply that it was not worth it to go so far just for the money. It wasn't supposed to be that bad, but the rain delayed the daylight, said Mo Fan. Not only was the giant corpse general powerful, it was also able to summon zombies to attack them. He initially thought they had a chance to eliminate the enormous creature, yet they were so close to being overwhelmed by the zombie horde. The land of the undead was indeed terrifying. Even with their team's strength, they were almost wiped out by the undead. We shouldn't risk it since it's still raining. The ash garlic isn't working, said the muscular man sternly. We can't simply hide here if the rain somehow doesn't stop anytime soon, said Mo Fan. We should still wait for a while, right? Those who are hurt should treat their wounds now, even if it's only a little scratch. Those zombies are poisonous. The wounds will fester in a few hours, said the experienced Shorty. Do we seriously have to wait until they are done changing? We're all grown-ups. Let's just change here. The cold is bothering me, suggested Mo Fan. Everyone agreed with Mo Fan. They quickly took off their clothes and took out fresh clothes from the airtight packages in their bags. The crackling from the bonfire was the only sound in the cave. Everyone was fairly tired from the epic battle. After treating their wounds and changing into dry clothes, they all laid down on some dry grass to rest up. Everyone was too tired to speak. Meng A had put on a new veil. It was a charming purple this time, concealing her attractive face. What are you doing here in the land of the undead? Asked Mo Fan. Meng A blinked and said softly with a faint smile, We've got an uncooperative associate here, so we're here to talk to him. Oh, what organization are you from? Asked Mo Fan. Parthenon. I think I've heard of it before. Mo Fan fell into deep thought. It's quite famous, Meng A nodded. Don't tell me you're a saintess, goddess, princess, or something like that. I've seen a lot of them on the TV, who cover their face and dress up in casual clothes to visit the commoners? Mo Fan asked with a smile. Meng A was not the icy type. Even though her temperament felt like she was above the common populace, she was still willing to answer his questions. The woman smiled and shook her head when she heard Mo Fan's wild speculation. I'm not that sacred. Hiding my face is only my personal preference. I think the veil is pretty. Our country's air quality isn't great. Wearing a veil won't make any difference. Even a mask is useless, said Mo Fan. Meng A giggled softly. Her voice, holding a mix of charm and sanctity, echoed in the cave. Shorty sat on the side, watching Mo Fan teasing Meng A with a dull expression. He finally ran out of patience, pulling Mo Fan to the side and whispering, Brother, it's I who found the woman first. Shouldn't you behave yourself? Brother, are you seriously stopping me when you're trying to put up an act? Responded Mo Fan mercilessly. Meng A was fairly attractive, and together with her mysterious identity, why would a normal man like Mo Fan not have the right to communicate with her? It was obvious that the woman did enjoy chatting with an Eastern man who was both handsome and knowledgeable, like him. You've brought one yourself. You should look after her feelings instead. Can't you leave Meng A to me? Whispered Shorty. Idiot. Who would complain about having too many girls? It's quite a journey for her to travel all the way here to China. I should let her experience the charm and humor of a Chinese man, shot back Mo Fan. The rain poured down heavily. Wa Village looked blurry in the rain. Gray sky, gray land, and a lonely village standing between the sky and the ground. All the colors it had were washed away by the rain. However, even though the village was quite old, the wooden logs were constructed skillfully, able to withstand the wet and the icy wind. Each structure, whether it was a big compound with a front yard, or so small that it only had a single room, was incredibly warm once the furnace inside was lit. Stupid! Why did you insist on plucking them when it's raining? Look at yourself. Hurry in and dry yourself. A young girl around the age of 20 stood under the roof, stomping her foot. Her face was red, either from the blame or feeling shy. In the rain, a skinny young man wearing a smile approached the entrance. He seemed hesitant to enter the house, as he was afraid that the mud on him would make the place dirty. Come on in, you're going to get sick from the cold. You were in such bad shape before, too. Su Xiaoluo dragged the young man into the house and quickly took his clothes off. As the man's shoulders and the shocking scars on his chest were exposed, the girl stomped the ground again and murmured, "Do it yourself. I've been looking after you for quite some time. It's not like I've not seen your naked body before." The skinny young man rubbed his head and let out an awkward smile. The man quickly changed into some fresh clothes. Even though they were all made of sackcloth, they were very warm. "These herbs are enough," she sighed. "The plague around Shanxi is becoming more severe. The rain is speeding up the rate of its spreading, too. A few villages are already contaminated. Adults are still able to last quite some time, but the kids and the old folks are suffering greatly. Their bodies are a lot weaker. I won't be looking after you now. I have to prepare the medicine." Su Xiaoluo smiled at the young man and went into another room to prepare the herbs. The skinny young man sat beside the furnace and gave her a smile. Su Xiaoluo giggled and said, "Is smiling all you can do? You should try your best to remember who you are instead. You can't live at my house for so long. The others would misunderstand it." Su Xiaoluo's voice became softer, as she felt rather embarrassed when saying that. "Forget it. Try and think about your past here." Su Xiaoluo turned around and walked toward the exit. However, after taking a few steps, she turned back and glanced at the shocking scar on the back of the young man's head and uttered a sigh. She had no idea what the man had gone through. The man was covered in wounds when she first saved him, but what shocked her the most was the blow to his head, which had almost cracked his skull open. He was lucky enough to stumble into her, as she was a doctor. Otherwise, he would be dead by now.